A big gear haul with Craig Levine on episode 470 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. Now, I should warn you a couple things first, folks, that both Craig and I have independently and several provinces apart managed to catch a very similar cold and are happy to report we're in the final recovery stages. And we're also both originally from Nova Scotia, so we apologize for that as well. So as part of an introduction here, I'll just mention that I met Craig Levine I don't know, 25 or so years ago when I was a member of the Halifax Center of the RASC, which is basically like the astronomy club in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where we're both members. And I think you eventually became the president there, didn't you, Craig?
I did.
Yeah. And then eventually became president of the whole darn RASC, good or bad.
I blame Roy Bishop, Dave Lane, Mary Lou Whitehorn, Dave Chapman, and a number of other people for that. Yes.
I try to blame Dave as much as possible for things.
Me too.
That's a joke because he and I collaborate in a whole variety of stuff. But yeah, so we kind of go back a little ways, and then at some point in time, we both had. I think you moved to Ontario, and then I moved about a year later, and then I think we sat on national council for a while before you were the national president too.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and anyway, and we used to observe sometimes out at the St. Croix Observatory there in Halifax, and attend lots of the national general assemblies they used to hold in person each year with the RASC, which is too bad. As I was chatting with one of our listeners and also an RAC member, Eric, this week. About missing those in-person GAs. Those were a lot of fun. I miss actually meeting people face to face, and we were sharing our mutual connections here before we got going. Because as you would go to those, regardless of where I've lived in the country, I would run into people from the London Center and be able to, sit down and have a drink or a meal or just attend lectures from them or with them. And those are great events, but I guess those are no more due to all the complexities of modern life and cost.
Unfortunately, yeah, those are great times. Made a lot of great friends, lifelong friends. We still communicate via, sometimes conversations like this, an email, a phone, but it's not the same as being in person.
Mm, mm. So, what was the best and worst parts about being the national president of the RASC?
Oh, okay. Well, the best part is, you're you're with a group of people continuously, especially when you're at the exec level, you're continuously, weekly. You're in several meetings. You're in person. You're in Toronto, etc. You're with people that are like-minded, and that's always good. And to say like-minded, we have the same love of astronomy. That's what brought us all together. Certainly, there's a lot of difference in political opinions, and you know. Who likes what type of movies and music. So there's a variety of people, but we have a commonality, right? And I miss that.
Mm,
Parts I didn't like, some of the stuff I can't talk about, but boy, there were some issues that occurred. I mean, it was a fairly tumultuous time. The RSC was going through a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes going on in the culture, generally in society, and we
mm,
had to reflect that. And there was a lot of pushback to that. And some behaviors, I think, I'm not going to go deep, some behaviors that might have been acceptable at one point
yeah.
really are not. And that caused some conflict. And boy, a lot of time was spent on things like that, almost from day one,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So yeah, it was stressful. I will say that. And then there was the legal issues having to deal with the CRA, that's the Canadian Revenue Agency. They changed a bunch of the rules around that time, so we had to retool, rethink, redo. I mean, just before I became president, we went from our old setup where we had the council, national council, every center rep, and that was, they within that we had an executive that kind of every 2 years or so they'd move to a different role within the exec. Well, that went away. We had to put in a board of directors, right?
Yeah.
And kudos to Mary Lou Whitehorn for insisting adamantly that we get an executive director. which was
Right.
fantastic. But those were all big changes. We're all trying to figure it out, how to go from a managing board to a governing board. And boy, what a culture change to make that shift. It was hard. And I was in the middle of that and I pushed hard for that. So yeah, no, it was energizing, but exhausting at the same time.
Yeah, I think
Less astronomy, more politics, put it that way.
yeah, and I think that's one thing we have experienced to different levels in our different levels of involvement with the RESC. I would say that's probably a fair assessment, Shane. Eh?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with all of those sentiments, probably at a smaller scale, at the center level. But how many hours a week would you put in, Craig, when you were president? What was the demand?
Well, so just as a side note to that, I took I where I was working at the time, I really pushed to get myself into a role that would give me more time to devote to the RESC. So I would say per week, let's see, probably 15 to 20 hours per week,
Wow.
sometimes more, while working a full time job. But I would have gone for a second term as president and put my name out there for it. But the company that I was working for was acquired a couple of times. Things shifted, and my role shifted, and it was a lot more demanding of my time. So I had to make a choice, right? Pay the rent or pay the mortgage, I should say, or continue on doing this. So I stayed on once I finished that, finished out my term, and that was it. And honestly, it kind of burnt me out for a bit. I kind of stayed away from everything
Yeah.
national and even local for about 5, 6, 7 years. And
Mhm.
Dave Lane, late Dave Lane, I really miss. I think the RAC misses him. A lot of people miss him. He was frustrated at one point. He said it happens every time. Every national president just disappears for a few years. And I go back and think of other former national presidents. Yeah, they just kind of say, "Okay, I need a break."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think really the main reason for me raising this is that when it comes to these astronomy clubs or societies like we have here in Canada, which is a slightly different beast just because of the nature of our country,
yeah.
um, it's something that I don't think people often think as much about. And certainly sometimes I think it's something that I would have given less thought to.
Mhm. But buy your local club volunteers a coffee next time you see them.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you know what? The other side of it, though, and just to close this one off, the the learnings from that are fantastic. So now I'm London president this year, and we're looking at doing the Nova program, and I'm insistent. As we do it, do we have enough volunteers? There's several modules. I do not want one person to take on a module. I want to see people pair up so the load is shared and bring more of the membership into it. And this is with other things as well too. I want to make sure that it's what happens is generally in any club. My wife has her own clubs, et cetera, et cetera. But you get a core group of people who do everything, and they get burned out after a while. So I'm really pushing hard to make sure that nobody feels burdened, nobody feels overwhelmed. And if they do, let me know. We will bring someone to help share this. And I'm talking to friends at a couple other centers, and they're divesting themselves of a bunch of roles because all of a sudden, well, if they're doing it, everybody else seems to dump it on them. It's like, no, you got to share the load. That's how you sustain the organization and bring new people in every year.
Nice. I think that's a great approach, Craig. They're strange entities, these astronomy clubs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because back when I joined, which was a few years after you had joined, but not, I don't think like a great number of years, but a few. Back in those days, you would go on the internet. There was a handful of astronomy websites, but there wasn't really any kind of solid astronomy communities in that, and certainly nothing is focused on all these specific avenues that people want to go down as there is now, which have in some parts replaced some of the need for astronomy clubs. So as you were alluding to earlier, there really are kind of these behemoths to try to run in an age when um, the necessity of them is much less than it had been in the past.
We've had the same discussion at the executive level in London. Exactly that. What's the value proposition in 2025, right? And there's such now, and especially now, there's such a diversity of communities in terms of there's lucky astronomy, there's visual astronomy, there's imaging, there's planetary, there's galactic, deep sky, I should say. There's binocular. I mean, there's always been that, but it's getting more, what's the word I'm looking for, siloed these days. People doing electronic assisted astronomy. It's everything. Just if you go to Cloudy Nights, look at the plethora of forums there. There's so many, and there's so many niche communities. How do you serve all those niches in one organization? It's tricky. And there's the armchair astronomers, people who love to read about it, look at the images from the observatories in space and on the ground and all those sort of things, the astrophysics of it all. You got to try and accommodate just what everybody. And at that point, are you diluting yourself too much? How do you focus? Right. These are the challenges I think every club is going through right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. The thing for me that I was very much glad to have started going and gone to astronomy club meetings for years, though I shouldn't say I don't go. I do go to them from time to time still, but certainly not as a regular. But is when I started doing astronomy, and this will kind of get us into our topic. When I started doing astronomy, I had it very much as a 20-year-old young person, really fixed in my mind what I wanted to do. I wanted to, because I was, into technology more so than necessarily the experiential side of things, but I wanted to become an astrophotographer. That's what I wanted to do, Craig. And I was pretty hell-bent on becoming a pretty good astrophotographer. And when I joined the club and started talking with other people and going out, and just going out under the stars with other people and learning from them and getting the advice from people such as yourself and Dave Lane and Dave Chapman, and in particular, to name just a small number of people who were instrumental in this, was to learn the sky, and learning the sky is a difficult thing to do. And I really think it's just spending that time out under the stars with more knowledgeable people. And that is a really cool experience. And it's really hard to put that down, in a tweet or somewhere that someone's going to pick up, or a note or some sort of even video or anything. It's really hard to convey that presence of being out under the stars. And the other thing is the gear is very cool. to say the least. So Craig, can you just give us a bit of a background on some of this gear that you've recently acquired, how you came to be the owner of such equipment, and give us a general overview of what we're going to talk about here?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a story. So I have an older brother. He lives in the United States. He's a doctor, an emergency room doctor, very busy guy. And as an aside, and I may have mentioned the last episode I was on, but for a while we weren't really close. We lived together for a year at university, but we were definitely of different mindsets on a number of things. He was really focused. He knew what his career was going to be. I was still kind of struggling to figure that out. And our politics, I think, were a bit not terribly different, but there was a difference, and a whole bunch of other differences, and kind of drifted for a bit. And going back to Halifax, I became president of the center there after literally I went to Roy Bishop and I said, Roy, I feel like people are twisting my arm to be president. And he grabbed my arm physically and said like this and twisted it up behind my back. He said, you make a good president. We'll help you. So at the same time, my brother founded his own astronomy club down in the States, down in Indiana. And we started talking one day after not talking for probably 2-3 months. And boy, there was the connection. We made our connection. That was about 23 years ago, 24 years ago, something like that. Yeah. And since then, we've gotten a lot closer because of that. And he's working on another big project down there, and we're making progress on that. I'm helping out in whatever ways I can. So, but the problem is, he's also very much into the collecting of things. For him, I think, and we've discussed it, I think the thrill for him really is sourcing this unique, this rare, the best, whatever that may be. And this is amongst all the things he's into. Like myself, I have a number of hobbies. Same with him. But all these things that he's collected really have not been used. And I'll show you guys as we're talking. For you folks at home, we can see each other on Zoom here. So I'll be showing the guys some stuff as I wander around with the iPad to help with the, really see what I'm talking about. We'll hopefully describe it for you. But he has all these things, and he realized, okay, I've got to declutter my life, because he works late nights, 24, 48-hour shifts, all those sort of things. And I'm into astronomy and very much diving hardcore back into it. So he said, you know what? I'm giving you my stuff. Take it. I want to see it used. I want to make sure it goes to a place I know it's going to get used. And I have plans, and we'll talk about those a little bit. So that's how I already had my own 13-inch Dob, 4-inch APO refractor, solar scope, and an ETX. So I had a little collection of little things that, well, some good things that gave me some great views over the last 20, 24, 25 years. And now that's kind of doubled and a bit. So, to give you an idea what's happened here now, came across the border with about 24 Pelican cases the first trip, came back with a bunch more the second trip. No issues with the border, straight through. Here's my list of bill of goods, all used, et cetera, et cetera. Have a nice day. And away I went. So fantastic. And I have another trip to make. And so I mentioned the nice thing is I've realized there's a bit of synergy with the stuff that I have. There's also about 60 odd eyepieces total. I had about 13 beforehand, 12, I think. There's a bunch more now, and a bunch more other things. And I'll show you some of that stuff in a bit, and we can talk about some of those things. But what's happened, though, is I have a nice, what's the word for it? A progression of gear that I can use. So the main equipment would be a 4-inch refractor, a 6-inch refractor, 9.25-inch SCT, Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, a 12-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope, a 13-inch reflector, and an 18-inch reflector. So I've got, various, and I was looking at it one day and looking at things together and go, wait a minute, I'm seeing how some of my options are going to work. It's still too much, I think, for one person. There's no question about that. But, I'm a little bit of like my brother. We are obviously the same genes. And I think I do have, my wife would say I'm a bit of a hoarder. I like to think I'm a collector of fine things. Well, whichever. I think they're both the same thing at the end of the day. That's how you look at it. But got to look at practicalities. Where I live now in Mount Bridges, Ontario, it's not, a lot of the stuff is not practical. First of all, there's space. That's an issue. We're storing all this stuff. I still have to pick up the 18-inch reflector, which is a JMI NGT18. If you haven't seen one of these, I'll show the guys here. You can talk about it. It's a 240-pound behemoth. It does break apart into 3 or 4 sections. This isn't my brother's one. It's his has been in storage for a decade. Right, he saw the ads in Sky and Telescope and astronomy, and I always wanted one. Well, one used came up, he bought it, and it's been in storage ever since. So that's the next one to pick up. It's a split ring equatorial, so it looks like a Dobsonian, but it's actually got that split ring in the back, right? And it's also motorized. It tracks, so that opens up some possibilities.
What's the aperture? Is it 18 inches?
18-inch. Yeah. So I don't know what the mirror looks like. Like I said, I haven't even been to the storage locker. That'll be the next trip, probably in the spring. But I'm hoping things are okay with it. It should be. Things have been well, it's well sealed, well covered, all that good stuff. But we'll see what happens when I open the storage locker and pull it out. So that's going to be interesting. So, but with all that, I do have options. And now, getting into some of the eyepieces, well, I've been a visual astronomer. That's been my thing. And like yourself, Chris, I wanted to get into imaging. Well, I tried a couple mounts, and they were always undersized. I'm naive. As you're going through things, you see a good deal, you jump at it and realize it's inadequate. So I had a couple mounts for the 4-inch refractor, but because it's an F8, large, momentum arm on the thing, right? It's not very stable on a smaller mount. So, and the bigger mounts, are expensive. They're not cheap these days, and especially with the Canadian dollar. Wow, things are tough right now for getting into astronomy. I got lucky with my former job. We were acquired by a massive multinational, so I took a package after being there 13 years. Took some time off, and I decided, you know what? We know we're going to eventually retire to, right on the Georgian Bay coast, some family property. That'll be sometime in the future. Don't know when. But I started looking. Well, I put my name in for an astrophysics refractor. Sorry, amount. Right, that's the holy grail. It seems for North America. But the pricing, yikes! That was an issue. But a good friend of mine, Ryan, very good imager, astro imager. He's won a couple of awards at Starfest. He's been in a couple of magazines. He's a great nature photographer. He's my mentor in this. He has a mount from Avalon Instruments, the Linear, it's called. It looks like a traditional gem, and it's a very nice mount. They're an Italian company, not a big presence in North America, I don't think. I'm guessing it's double-digit mounts sold in North America, but they're nice. They're hewn from solid chunks of aluminum, precision CNC'd, amazing things. So we were talking one day on the phone. And I was talking, in astrophysics, my name is in, but I don't know. The cost is it's getting ridiculous now. He says, well, let's take a look. And there was a dealer in Ontario that had a couple from when the mount I eventually got was introduced. There was an introductory offer, and he was just to clear them out after a couple of years, 3-4 years maybe. He was selling it at the introductory price, which is about $5,000 less than they're going for now. My wife said, go for it. And I did. So the one I got, and listen, I know I'm kind of jumping a bit, but these are points we'll be able to go back to and discuss. So I'll show you on screen here, so you get an idea, and you folks can look it up on at home as well too. So it's the Avalon Instruments M-Do. It's a single arm fork mount. Okay, you can do a lot of things with it though. You can put 2 telescopes on it. Right, it'll do 55 pounds to go to the old system of measurements. 55 pounds one scope, 75 pounds with 2. Okay, and that's conservative. So you can do a fair bit. And it will fit inside an observatory. We'll definitely want to talk about that because I'm thinking about, one of those domes. But Chris, I know you've had some perspectives on dome, and I think yourself, Shane, a dome versus a roll-off roof. But the point of this scope this mount is versatility. You can see there's, things are held together. The right ascension and declination, they're held together by 8 bolts, 4 on each side, and an L bracket. Well, that L bracket, there's 4 different positions, 4 or 5 positions you put in. You also reverse that, as you can see there. This is reversed from there. So you have a lot of ways you can configure it. It's extremely configurable. Okay, so that's at the risk of sounding like a sales guy, because I'm not. I don't work for these guys. I don't get any money from these guys. But there are some advantages to it. And I'll recount some of there's 4 big advantages for me why I really like this. So first of all, there's no maintenance. There's no re-greasing. I had a Cinta mount and had with the old, if you recall, the 80s, 90s, the Cinta grease. It's greased up, not designed for the cold temperatures in Canada. You got to take it apart, and boy, that's not fun. Re-grease it, definitely not fun. So there's no maintenance, no re-greasing. It's belt driven. Basically, industrial belts you can buy anywhere. They're supposed to last a lifetime, but if you need to do it, it can be done. All right, it's easy. Through the mount cabling. So one of the scopes I had, I'll just go brief on that one. The Celestron 9.25, it was on, the fork mount from Celestron and had the Star Zone landing pad, which makes it easier to put the scope on it. Well, that ripped $100 dew heating cable. The first night I tried it out, and lifting it up was so hard on my shoulder. I had a shoulder injury of some sort for 4 years now. For whatever reason, everything's fine with the shoulder, but at the time I could barely lift it up onto the mount. So that I had to get rid of that. And that's kind of what drove me toward the Avalon. And it's easy to set it up. That's the nice thing about it. No meridian flip for Schmidt-Cassegrains or short refractors. That's a huge one. No meridian flip to deal with. I'm sold. That did it for me. And the last thing is that it comes with absolute encoders. You still need to what's the word for it? Guide scope. You still need a guide scope with it, but it knows it's where it's positioned at all times. So I'm hoping with firmware updates as they do it, we'll be able to actually use the absolute encoders and hopefully have to do less, tracking to keep things going, or less brain dead here. But yeah, so I wouldn't have to. So it'll make it easier to use. So I like the ease of use of it. At the end of the day, that's what kind of sold me on it. And my wife likes it because it's a damn sexy looking mount. Ferrari red. because they are made in Italy. But there are downsides. I'll just touch on that really briefly. Now, the problem is there's not a big user base in North America. So that's a problem. And even if you go on cloudy nights, there's also not a lot of users. You do a post, a few people have posted, following on, but that's about it. So not a big user base. They have a small forum on their website in Italy. Not terribly active, but I will say their support is fantastic. They respond immediately. Weekends, they're great. Documentation is very poor, very thin. It's kind of like Google Translator from Italian, so it's hard to parse it sometimes.
Mhm.
But the quality is outrageous. It really is that good. Like I say, the price, the quality, you really can't beat. I was impressed with Ryan's model, and he saw this when he said, "You got to jump on this one. This is a deal," and he was correct. Anyway,
So
I've talked a lot on that, so there you go.
is that the 9.25 on it?
That's the 9.25 on it. I've taken apart all the stuff that goes on top because I wanted to see if I could get everything on the 4-inch refractor, the astrophysics, which I can. So yeah, that's the 9.25 on there. I put on here to get myself started. I mean, I still have to work out getting it properly polar aligned. Eventually, it'll sit in an observatory, but I got to get it properly, learn polar alignment, do that properly, make sure I understand guiding. So initially, I'm going to mount a DSLR. I have a Wasmandi bracket on top for DSLRs on the top bracket. And I'll probably do some visual while I'm doing it. But eventually, one of the pieces of gear for my brother was this Attic Horizon color camera. It's about 2018 model thereabouts. Still an excellent little camera. This will get me going, help me understand things. And one of the first rules of imaging is never start with a Schmidt-Cassegrain because they're like F10, right? It's tricky, it's hard. But I do have, as part of the gear, the Hyperstar from Star Arizona as well.
Nice.
So that's honestly, any one of these things that you guys can see, I got the 12-inch, I've got the astrophysics, there's the 6-inch APM ED 150 ED APO 152 millimeter 1200 focal length on there. Like any one of these things isn't that one of those aspirational things you save up for a long time there and you have it and you use it for the rest of your life. Well, I've got this. All of a sudden, these things I got to figure out, what am I keeping? What should be sold? How will I use things?
What
was that?
Which Starfire is that? Is that the 4.7?
No, that's the 102 millimeter.
Oh, the 102. Okay.
Yeah, that's about 1992.
That's been owned for a long time, right?
Yeah, I had that in Halifax as well too.
Yeah, I wondered if it was the same one. For some reason, I thought it was the 120 millimeter.
No, that is the.
And it's F8, right?
Yeah, that is an F8. A little out of focus. Don't know why that is. I think it's because I'm doing that.
It's hard to see. Yeah.
Yeah,
Craig, is that six? Oh, sorry, Craig. Is the 6-inch on a DM6 mount?
Yeah, that was the next thing. I'm really sad to see that Tom Peters, I believe, was the owner. They shut down December 31st.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Mount, I was shocked to see that and saddened.
Yeah. I think he retired. Was that the reason? He just was. Well, no, he had issues getting supplies. I think sourcing some of the material.
Well, and he hasn't raised his prices, so sourcing costs. A lot of competition out there that are undercutting him. His patent is ending, and next year or the year after, it's ending. So I think the writing was on the wall. He just couldn't compete with a lot of the cheaper stuff from overseas. Right. And if nobody's ever seen, look up the Disc Mount 6. The website's still up. It's got 6-inch bearings, which are at one's horizontal, one's vertical, solid as a rock. My brother had a dual plate on it. He had the 6-inch refractor and the 12-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain on it at the same time. There's another mount I'll show you downstairs. Big heavy duty Wasmandi mount. He has that with the DM base for it as well too. And there's the Teleview Star Beams on it and the Nexus DSC. I mean, I've had digital setting circles set up on my Big Dob. I don't use it much. I'm much more comfortable with a Telrad or a unit finder, a red dot finder like the Teleview. They're excellent, and I know my way around the night sky. And Chris, to your point, any newcomers to the hobby, learn the night sky. Get a pair of binoculars, a book on binocular astronomy. Get an atlas and just learn the night sky. And that's how I got started with it. Right,
Mm.
makes it a lot easier. That way you can use these unit finders, and it's nice to have digital setting circles as an option. Maybe if there's a lot of clouds and sucker holes, you want to peek through them. It's handy to have the digital setting circles, but you should be able to find your way around without it. That's my take on it.
It's amazing to see that the size difference between that 102 Starfire and the APM, it's it's not a world of difference, eh? Like, I mean, one's just a little bit longer, but look at them, eh?
See if I can do that.
Yeah.
Oops. Oh, I lost it there. Hold on a second. I pressed the wrong. May have hit something here. You guys see me?
Yeah.
I can't see you guys now. Don't know why. Oh, well.
You're not missing much.
There we are. But I also can't see my camera on here. Anyway, we'll hopefully you can edit that part out. Let me see here.
It's okay.
All right.
You can kind of get the gist, even seeing it on the floor like that next to it. They're not hugely different in size. Those Starfires are kind of overbuilt, I think.
I think they absolutely are. There's no question. They completely are. Just 1 second here.
Sort of reminds me, Chris, of the TSA 102 when I had a photo beside the Skywatcher 120. There really wasn't much of a physical difference, in the tubes and the dew shields and all of that.
Mm. Yeah.
There we are. Now I can see you guys. Perfect. Okay, let's say they really, the weight and the size of them, they're not terribly different in weight because that's a triplet and that's a doublet, but the size, you're right, is incredibly big. Now, one of the things I like, because my brother likes his things to be just so, every one of these things has a feather touch. So this the only one that doesn't is the one I've had a long time. That is the original astrophysics focuser. The APM refractor has a feather touch focuser. It's the big one as well too. So I think it's 3.5 or 3.8 inch diameter at the back. It's got that. There's a feather touch on the back of the 9.25. There's a feather touch on the back of the Meade. And for the Meade, I'm just waiting for a part to come in so I get bring a racket in all the way. There's a feather touch focus for the rear of the. Now, just to compare, if you folks online listening online and in your cars or wherever, there's a company that they're out of business now, Van Slyke Engineering. They were out of Colorado. They went out of business 10 years ago. The website's still up. Looks like straight from the 1990s. The website's still up. The Colorado fire destroyed the business. He never rebuilt. He had no insurance. But his stuff, like this, is also one of his refract. Look at the focusers. It's like a cyberpunk thing. And if you look at the one of the dials to rack in and out, that's an audio. Here. What was that?
Yeah, like I said, I got to describe it to listeners here. This does not quite look like a focuser. It looks like something out of an industrial plant. It's sort of this metallic gray. It has a couple bearings that are bored through on the sides and at 90-degree angles. It's got a bunch of external springs and what I can only describe as a large captain's wheel against one of the focusers.
And that's for fine focusing. But it's also built from you don't know if you can really see that's an audio dial for doing volume.
Wow.
So it's a machine thing. It's not anodized or anything. It's not finished, but it's built like a tank. And there's a couple of them that came with the gear. It's built like you could drop it on your foot and your foot will not survive it very well. I can tell you that.
Oh,
it's insane.
Yeah, people really should go to this website just to get a sense for how this is built. It's so unique. The URL is observatory.org, and there's some really neat stuff here.
I mean, it is his ads in the magazines at the time. Boy, you just pour through them, going, "That's cool." It looks very steampunk. Yeah. If anybody's familiar with that genre, it's very 19th century high tech, if you want to call it that, right? That's the look, the aesthetic of it. And it's like, say, raw. There's no finish. There's no pretty colors. There's no anodizing to make it look sweet. No, it's just raw hunks of metal that are highly functional and solid, like a tank.
Mm-hmm.
So that's some of the stuff. One of the things, a couple things picked up with it as well too. I got a great deal on it from a nearby company, a LifePo 400 amp hour battery fantastic. This will power this thing. Like, I'll go to Starfest. I may have to charge it once during it if I do all-nighters for the whole thing. So tons of power. This thing draws very, very little power, which is the nice thing with that. So, but, to kind of go back up about, 30,000 feet. So all of a sudden, I've gone from, some capable gear for observing. Well, now I got some stuff for imaging, and I got to figure out, and I'll show you one of the things that's going to be an issue. So with all the scopes that I have, there will be a combination. Some will be used for imaging. Some will be used for visual. Now, as a visual guy, I mentioned I had a nice collection of eyepieces, but you guys got to see. You folks online at home will be able to see. Let me see here. I put it all out here so I can figure things out. So there is a table. So just Chris or Shane, do you want to set the scene of what we're looking at here?
It looks like an astronomy store to me. There's so many eyepieces.
It actually looks like a really, really well-stocked astronomy store.
Yeah.
So this is too much for one person. There's no question, and I got to figure out what to do. And my problem is as a visual guy. So because the Dob is unpowered, right? You manually move it across the sky. So I like the wide field eyepieces, Teleview, Explorer Scientific. I think that's what these are. I'll take a look here. Yeah, Explorer Scientific. A couple others, Masuyama. It's the Pentax, which I really love. So that's what I've used. But now that I have this mount, I can also put the refractors, but also the Schmidt-Cassegrains on. And if that Dob, the 18-inch, works as I want and it will track, well, I got these Takahashis, which have a narrower field of view, but they might be actually a lot sharper than some of the, gigantic, multi-lensed pieces of, hunks of glass. So I do want to get rid of stuff, but I can't do that until I've actually compared and tested. And that could be, how long will that take? Especially in the Great Lakes area when it's clouds. This could be a project that take a while, but I do need to downsize this. There's just a lot here.
What are the Pentax eyepieces?
So the Pentax, I've got I've had these actually, I think, since Halifax. The Pentax SMC XL 10.5, 14, and the zoom lens. What is that? They don't say it's the 60 times, because these are used for spotting scopes, they're great in astronomy as well too. But here it is, 8 to 24 Pentax, which is probably the best zoom lens I've ever used. I actually had a Nikon zoom that came with this kit that I sold to my friend Ryan.
And the Takahashi eyepieces, are those the orthos or the LEs?
Yeah, so there's I've got 3 LEs, 3 TOEs, and the MC Abe 18 millimeter.
Oh, nice, very nice
as well. Yeah,
and I see a couple Bino viewers or 3 Bino viewers on the table. Just going back to that 6-inch APM refractor, is it Bino viewer friendly? Like, does it have a section of the OTA that can be removed so that the Bino viewer can be used natively?
Totally is Bino. Well, not so much natively, but I do have the Astrophysics Barativ, however you pronounce that, their Barlow attachment on this one and one on that one. This one doesn't. I haven't tried that one, but I think I've had a couple. I think all of these, I've tried all 3, and they do work in the APM. I'll confirm that for the one that doesn't have a Barlow attachment, but they all do. But at least 2 of them do. Certainly, those 2 do. And actually, I have better range of focus than on the 4-inch refractor, so it's actually much more Bino viewer friendly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And these are all Denny Levantics. If you know from Cloudy Nights, he's the Bino viewer guy. These are all Zeiss microscope conversions. This one's a unique one. He did a one-off. We had something specially machined for it, so that's a nice one. So yeah, they're really good. And I got some nice eyepieces, some Zeiss eyepieces for the 9.95 ones, but I've also got some, there's 17.5-inch Morpheus pair. I've got these LOAs, which you can use them normal, or they have this weird design on the other one where it can make things look 3D in the sky. That's more gimmicky to me. I haven't tried them yet. I haven't had a chance to try much of any of these.
I I
yeah,
had the Dankmeyer binoculars that they released, which kind of used the same design as those LOA eyepieces and produced a 3D image. And it certainly did make things 3D that were kind of in the center of the field of view. But to your point, Craig, it was kind of gimmicky for me at least, and I sold them, so wasn't my
well,
cup of tea.
well, thankfully though, these also come with the second lens that's not the gimmicky. So I actually have a couple
Oh,
normal pairs off them,
neat.
and then the gimmicky ones. And what's kind of like about that as well too is, especially with the Bonnie viewers, I think one of these is a 32 millimeter. So that'll give me some nice wider field, because some of these are 10 millimeter, 25 millimeter, 16, etc.
Okay. Which Zeiss eyepieces do you have in the collection?
Yeah, so these are so I went into Cloudy Nights. If go into cloudynights.com, go into the Bino Viewer section. There's a section there on the lenses, the eyepieces, a forum discussion where I actually asked, what are these any good? Because there's high quality, low quality, a ton of stuff out there. Apparently,
Mhm.
these are all very good, which is not surprising. These are all microscope eyepieces. You say
Mm.
the 0.95, but I've had which one? Yeah, I've had this pair of 10 millimeters for a while. These apparently are very, very good, and I've used them in this Bond viewer a number of times. Views are sharp. I mean, just it's through
Mhm.
a triplet with the Zeiss Bond viewer and the Zeiss eyepieces, which they're really designed for. Beautiful, and it's breathtaking. I will say.
Yeah.
And there's another set of 10 millimeter of a different design, but still very good. The 16 and 25s are excellent. There's even one Leica uh, microscope eyepiece. And when you look through it in the daylight, you can actually see a bunch of etchings and markings on it that are designed for measuring when we're using a microscope. You don't see them at night when you're looking through at the night sky. So that's supposed to be very good wide angle planetary. I don't know yet. I haven't had much time to even look at any of these yet. So yeah.
It looks like you've got like the 35 or 41 panoptic, the 9 millimeter Explorer, 120 degree 5.5 Explorer, some of the Ethos, and all kinds of different eyepieces like that. Looks like
Yeah, well, there's
20.
my old trusty 27 Panoptic, 31 Nagler. I had actually got a second one. I sold the other one I've had for a long time. The original 20 millimeter Nagler Type 2, a 7 and a 9 Type 6, two of the Zooms, which I'm gonna have to sell one of them, but there's not a big market for those right now. Because there's a lot out in the market and things are expensive these days. Yeah, the 9 and 5.5 Explore Scientific. The 9 is very good, awesome in a reflector, terrible in the 6-inch refractor.
Hmm.
It's, trying to get your eye right in the right spot to see anything. It's tough. I was kind of very disappointed with that, but it is great in a reflector. There's no question. Yeah, and there's a pair of 24 millimeter panoptics as well too. I'm thrilled how I used to have a 19 millimeter. Really sad I sold that years ago, but I was always wanted the 24s. So yeah, that's a fantastic eyepiece.
Yeah, they're great in bino viewers as well. Quite enjoy those.
What
Yeah.
are the ones that look like little toilet paper rolls?
Oh, these?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So another interesting website. Give me a second here. Another website to check out if anybody hasn't yet. Harry Siebert. He's a character. There's no
Oh, yeah.
question. His very handmade aesthetic. So what these are some eyepieces my brother gave me years ago. He got them from my brother was commissioned some stuff from Harry. He actually had, I think, some 3-inch barrel eyepieces at one point. He sold them. Too bad. Anyway, Harry said, check these out. So they are a single. Where's my camera? So look at that. It's a single spherical eyepiece.
Oh, the ball eyepieces that he
The
made.
ball eyepiece.
Yeah.
Like literally, you gotta make it touch your freaking eyeball
Ugh.
to see anything out of it. The contact lens at the end of the day. The field of view is narrow. The good part, the rest of it is just unusable. But if you have now that I have a scope or a mount rather that tracks, and once I get it set up in my eventual observatory, I'll give it a try. But it's just no.
If people haven't heard of those eyepieces, I recommend you just do a little reading on Cloudy Nights or probably Stargazer's Lounge too. They're very interesting. Like I've never looked through one, but they seem like a very interesting eyepiece in that like that very, very narrow part that is, well focused and is usable is supposed to be like unmatched in terms of quality. It's worse than a soda straw field of view.
Very much so. But like I say, if you have a mount of tracks and you are perfectly polar aligned, I can see you would see a lot of detail. But it's a niche eyepiece. It's kind of
Mhm.
these like, if it can be done, let's do it. But is there a market for it? Probably not. Maybe there's 7 hardcore people in the world that swear by them. But I really don't know yet. I really haven't had a chance to give them a fair run through. So yeah, there's a lot to work through. Like I say, I do want to pare this down, but I don't want to get rid of anything until I've compared and tried it. But there was also, not madness to his methods, but methods to his madness in my brother and what he picked out. So, the tacks are excellent planetary eyepieces. The wide field stuff is fantastic for a Dob. There's no question, or even a refractor. Um, the eyepieces for the bino viewers, and each one, there were sets that came with each bino viewer. They are perfectly matched and designed. Do I need 3 bino viewers? I got to figure that out. Probably not. And if I sell any, what do I keep? Which one do I keep? Which one do I sell? And which eyepieces do I keep? I mean, the 10 millimeters are redundant. Probably sell them. You can find the eyepieces on eBay. So they're fairly easily found these days, which is good. The LOAs and the ones for the 1.25 inch barrel Bonaviewer, which ones do I keep? Which was it's the problem is with me with too much choice, you get choice paralysis, right? That's the thing. I like a simpler kit, and this is the polar opposite of simple. And these are some of the cases, the things came in with me, and I managed to,
I think you have more eyepiece cases than I have eyepieces, and I'm not.
well,
There's got to
these
be what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got to have
there's
25, 30
there's
cases.
about, there's about 24, 25 cases.
Yeah.
I've managed to condense them, so I actually gave one to my friend Ryan, so I condensed a number of them, so I got them down. So I got 3 big ones I can do something with, whatever. That's just a pair of binoculars, by the way. This gigantic one, 20 by 100, 20 by 110s. So yeah, so there's a lot of things to work through. My goal at the end of it is to get a good kit that I'm happy with, that is less clutter for sure. But will give me the things I want to do. Definitely, I know what I want to do with imaging, so I'm pretty much set there. I got to figure out now what's my world going to be like for visual, both on the tracking mount, both with the Dobbs, I should say, and with the refractors, because what's a great eyepiece, as I mentioned with a couple here on one telescope, is really poor on the other. Those are things, and I also got to factor out, and the Observer's Handbook, by the way, the RASC Observer's Handbook comes out every year. There's a diagram by Roy Bishop, and Chris, you may not remember, I did a presentation on this one diagram for 45 minutes. But what you do is, it's great if it looks complicated when you look at it, but really quickly, and it's hard to describe something visually in an audio format here. But the great thing with that is, you put a line across what your age is, your focal length off your telescope, your eyepieces, etc., and you can figure out. And I've used this. I have to readapt it now that I'm a bit older. Then, but you can show which eyepieces with which telescope you don't need your glasses for. You can figure that out, and it works very well. So I got to figure out, do that exercise for each one of those telescopes that I'll be using visually, which eyepieces are made, and hopefully I'll be able to weed out some that just will not work. Like I said, the 9mm is great on one scope, horrible on the other. Is that an overall keeper or not? Because there's obviously some redundant focal lengths in here, right? And I've even got a couple Barlows as well. I don't really need Barlows. I prefer not to use them. Less glass, the better, I think. But they have their place. But if I can get rid of a number of things that way and have a good setup for planetary, good setup for deep sky, then I'll be happy. But this is actually stressful, having all this stuff. There's a cost to it. There's insurance to deal with. There's security, and we have good security here. We have good insurance, all that good stuff. But those are all stressful things, right? I want to get rid of some of that stuff, and I got to figure out how to do it. I sold a little bit at Starfest, but there's still a lot. As you can see, there's still a lot.
Well, as I've said to Shane many times, you're more than welcome to keep some of it out at my place.
Oh, there you go. And also a lot of books, by the way. I've picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelves, 6 shelves of astronomy books.
Holy smokes. So, Craig, you've got a 9.25 inch HD Celestron. You've got the 12-inch Meade
Yep.
SCT. You've got the old 4-inch or 102 mil Starfire
Yeah.
F8. You've got the 150 millimeter APM ED F8. You've got the Avalon mount. You've got the DM6 disc mount Alt as on its own tripod. And I recall you have a 13-inch reflector, and you've got the 18-inch um, JMI to go pick up.
Yep. GMI. Yep. Let's pick
And
up. And plus, I've also got this little APM Altaz mount as well too.
oh,
Really
this
nice.
you. Mm,
Oh, sorry, Stellar View rather. Stellar View M2. Really nice. I tried to sell it. There were no takers, but anyway, one of those things I got to look at. And what are my redundancies? And that is, I think, another one.
nice. So what are you thinking for your plans for visual?
Well, that's the question. Oh, as a quick thing, if you want to look up, there's I have this really heavy duty mount from what's his name? Oh God, brain is terrible. Anyway, this is a heavy duty mount that has absolutely you can't extend the legs whatsoever. It's massive. It weighs an absolute ton. It's a Los Mandy mount, by the way. So one of the original, I think, Titan type mounts.
Oh,
Really huge.
yeah.
But for visual, yeah, no. So see, again, I have options. My plan is to use the mount that I bought, the Avalon. That's going to be primarily for imaging, but I will be doing some visual with that as well too. Some planetary for sure. Um, I think the JMI and we'll see a lot of use. I'll probably see less use of my 13-inch one. That was built by a guy named Steve Tancock. He just passed away in December from
Oh,
Halifax.
I knew
Yeah,
Steve.
a great guy. I have a few things that he built. So that will probably see less use because I'll be able to wheel out the JMI. I'll get some wheelie bars and wheel it straight out where I plan to use it. It'll be right out under the night sky very quickly. That'll be easy. The APM will definitely use because that's a quick setup with the disc mount. Fantastic. So those will
Mm.
be my two visual instruments, I believe, and occasionally with the SCTs on the other mount, but primarily it'll be that refractor and that scope. And then from there, that's when I'll start figuring out which eyepieces are the ones to keep and which have to go. Yeah, it's like I say, if I sound a little, dumbfounded and overwhelmed, I absolutely am. I mean, this it really put in perspective. Say a lot of these items individually are aspirational. Well, there's a lot of them here, and having a lot of things and a lot of clutter and a lot of choice, it complicates your plans when you want to go do something. So what I try and do, like I took the APM out, I just grabbed 3 eyepieces and went out with that and enjoyed the heck out of them, and had some fantastic views in December. End of December, I saw the transits of one of the moons across Jupiter. Fantastic.
Mm.
That was one of those moments I haven't had in a long time where it just felt pure joy. And I spent about an hour and 20 minutes just looking, observing, drinking in the views, and that I've missed that. It's been quite a while since I've actually felt that wow type moment. So I'm glad to be getting back into that after a few years of kind of drifting along with it.
So what are your thoughts on this observatory business?
Yeah, observatory. Well, so I do like the thought of the dome. Now, Shane, you had one of those, right? That's that's the one from
Sky Shed.
Sky Shed. Yeah. So
Yeah.
my friend Ryan has one. Another good friend, Bill, he has one of those as well too. They like them. Actually, for my friend Bill, his big dome, his 10-foot dome, got slightly damaged in a storm, just the shutter, and he decided to get rid of that and get the smaller dome like you guys have, like you have, Shane, or Hedge. You had Sky Shed dome, and he said, I'll give you this, or make an offer. Otherwise, it's going to the dump." And my wife said, "That is ugly. We have no place to store right now." And I like the one Ryan has. That's really nice. And he saw the photo I showed you guys off my mount in one of those domes. It fits. But Chris, you and I were back and forth a bit. You have a roll-off roof observatory, and Shane, you had one of those Sky Sheds. Maybe you can tell me why that dome didn't work out for you specifically. They work out for a lot of people, but they're not for everybody.
Yeah, well, for me, it wasn't really the design or operation of the sky shed that made me decide I wanted to sell it. It was it's in my backyard and I have a number of obstructions blocking various parts of the sky. And
Mhm.
I just found that I was starting to observe more outside of the observatory so I could position the scope to see XYZ object. And so most of my backyard observing wasn't even in the dome anymore. So it probably sat virtually unused for maybe 2 years. And,
Wow.
within that time frame, I maybe went in it two or three times. So I thought, you know what? Let's free up that real estate in the backyard and move the dome on to somebody who would use it more often than I. So that's what I did.
Wow. And Chris, what's your perspective on dome versus a rectangular roll off roof?
Yeah, so I've been in a whole pile of these Skyshed pods, and I mean they are really cool. When they first came out, I for sure that's what I was going to get. And then I'd been to Shane's and I'd been to a few other people's and kind of visited a whole pile of roll-offs. As you know, like in Nova Scotia, there's we had a pile of roll-offs and a few in Ontario I visited too. And I noticed with the pods, like there's sort of ideal use case or the ideal build really is what it is to put a pier in and to put them up on a like an elevated deck of some sort and then to construct the pod around that and put some sort of flooring and such in. And
Yeah.
then once you kind of get a pier in and you floor in and some flooring and that sort of thing, I mean, honestly, that's half of a roll off anyway. And the thing that I noticed in being in them is that it's they can be okay sort of solo on your own, but I gotta say a 6-inch f8 feels like it might be a bit long in there. What do you think about that size of a scope in a pod, Shane? Seems a bit long.
Yeah, like there's two sizes now of the pod. The original ones were 8 feet in diameter, and a 6-inch f8 would probably be the biggest you'd ever want in there. And even that, I think, might be a little large because I had my 120 ED in there, and it was a little tight to, like between kind of the diagonal and the sidewalls. Sometimes it was, you couldn't get right behind the telescope, you'd be beside it. So yeah, I think a 6-inch might be a little too large. Although now I think they have a 10-foot diameter option, or maybe 12. I can't remember, which would
Yeah,
be quite helpful.
I was talking to Wayne Parker at Starfest, and especially post COVID, I think his business is booming on the original sheds. So I think he's kind of holding off a little bit, in my understanding, on the bigger ones, because in any business you go where the market's taking you,
Mm-hmm.
and he's doing such a great booming business right now with his standard ones. Because I know my brother and his plans for his club's work down in Indiana, they want the bigger ones, but I think we're going to be a while off before then. And for myself too, I don't intend on putting the 6-inch in there. It'll really be only the 4-inch refractor and the SCTs that I plan on having in the dome. So I will be using the like say the disc mount with the big refractor, the big binoculars.
Mm-hmm.
Those will be the primary things I'll be using the disc mount for, and that to me will be more of my portable rig, because that APM is a light telescope, relatively speaking. It's awkward, but it's not terribly heavy.
Yeah. One thing I like about the roll-off roof, which I think is obvious, is just you see the whole sky. So that's quite nice. What I enjoyed about the Sky Shed pod was that if it was a windy evening, you could virtually eliminate the wind inside the
Mm,
dome by just, orienting the dome so that the closed side, I guess, is taking the wind. Now, maybe it's not a part of the sky you were planning to observe, but you can still observe. So that's one thing I really
yeah.
enjoyed. It was cozy. I think a little cozier when there's a wind because you're essentially perfectly sheltered.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And my friend Ryan, I'm tall. I'm 6'2". Ryan's 6'4" and a bit, and he's finding, especially now, he got Actually, he got himself a similar size refractor recently, and he's finding his dome is cramped right now. And there's no room
Mhm.
for two people in there when he has that refractor.
for sure.
on it. So he did caution me on that part of it. So yeah, the points are well taken. But we'll have to see. Because one of the things I liked about the concept of the dome, especially they have a version where you can actually slide that dome part
Yeah.
off.
Yes.
Yeah, that caught my eye, and knowing that I'll be looking over the west over Lake Huron, Georgian Bay, and there's neighbors to the back of the other side of the back end of the off the dome, so that could block any potential light. They have proper lighting there, so it's not glaring out, it's facing down, it's dim, all that sort of stuff, but it can potentially block any light behind me if I'm doing visual stuff. So that kind of crossed my mind as something too, but I'll have to wait till the time comes and I can actually do a good survey of the site, take a good close look, and in the wintertime or fall, when there's no leaves on those trees, how much of an issue might that be? I don't think it'll be much, but you never know, right? They could sell the house, somebody comes in and they want to have every tree lit up with floodlights, right? And I've seen that around my neighborhood. Awful.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to time here, Craig, but just real quick, as somebody who's into astronomy gear, did you have a chance to look at the Teleview Nagler 7s yet?
Nagler 7s, no, and I'm gonna show myself to be utterly embarrassed. Nagler 7s, I haven't it hasn't crossed my radar. What's up with the Nagler 7?
I just thought I'll tease you with it then if you hadn't heard. So anyway, you can look those up when we're done. But
no, I cannot do that, because you know what will happen? I'll start jonesing for them, and that will not have a good outcome.
We'll just tease people with that then. We should cut off here. Craig, any final thoughts?
Get out and observe, folks. Even if it's, there's sucker holes and you don't have a telescope, go out naked eye. If you have a pair of birding binoculars, get out, take a look at Jupiter. You'll be surprised to see the position of the moons shifting hour over hour. So just get out and do it. There's no excuses. I've come up with many over the years, but that's gone. Get out when you get a chance. It's worth it.
That's a perfect setup for our next episode, Chris.
Oh, exactly. Anything to add on your end?
No. Thanks again, Craig. Always fun to talk to you, and good luck with your gear reconciliation. You got a lot to go through there.
And guys, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on again, and anytime. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Craig. And to the listeners, please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know. Send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.